In this episode, we take a look at what we've been up to.
I'm back, baby!
And I know some of you are at home going, 6 times 10, carry the 1.
We take a look at some prototypes.
Train cars!
We take a different approach on weathering a freight car while popping and swapping some wheels to give it a better look.
Well, he only does it because he's trying to make money.
And we pause briefly to slowly take a look at some of the weathering techniques that a fellow modeler has applied to a number of his freight cars.
And also check out what the curmudgeon's gripe of the week is this week. Only in this episode, Sue the Milwaukee Road.
Hello and welcome to the 7th season of Sue the Milwaukee Road. When this episode ends, it's going to be 91 episodes in the books.
Get out of here!
And I know some of you are at home going, 6 times 10, carry the 1. Add 30 of the GN in 1970, you got yourself 60 plus 30 plus 1, 91. Not too bad. But at the end of the day, I didn't record everything that I've been working on. I know I've been saying that I'll share some of the stuff I've been working on. I recorded some of it, but not all of it. One of those things was slimming the proto throttle.
Boring.
Even further. Yeah, I slimmed it even further than what I showed in a previous video. And all it really is trying to file down some of the tabs and points and things that are inside the proto throttle. Running the box through the table saw again to thin it down a little bit more.
It's not groundbreaking.
It's not, must-see TV.
Blue shirt wins round 2. Rubber match. Blue shirt gets it.
So I didn't record it. I just did it to kind of challenge myself. So
If you don't have a proto throttle, it's definitely worth picking one up. I'm not saying you have to, but it has made the high watt elevator just a little bit more fun to run.
and I did cover some of the stuff I've worked on over here. It's not groundbreaking. I probably only get 95% of it finished, but then that at least means I'm still a model railroader, because I would say
95% of the model railroaders out there only reach 95%, and the 5% that say they hit 100%,
they're lying. Let's get into this. Let's take a look at some of the stuff I've been working on and enjoy this season of Sue the Milwaukee Road.
We're going to take a brief look at some of the stuff that I've been doing. People have been asking,
what have you been working on lately?
well, this is some of the stuff. I didn't record it all step by step. I've recorded some other stuff, but we'll take a look at that later. I'm going to tell you some of the steps and the techniques that I used. In this case, it was the Tamiya washes with the Doc O'Brien weathering chocks. I really liked the way they turned out. I actually dug out a couple of single bay air slides that one of them I had done, and I figured I'd weather up the other one as well. I then pivoted onto an Atlas 70-ton ballast hopper. Now, this car itself was picked up at a show at a reasonable price, and I figured, well, let's look to the prototypes and see if they lasted. A Chuck Zieler photo from 1987, you bet they lasted. It also helps to look at prototypes to weather the cars. This one needs a little bit more work, but it's getting there. I end up moving on to a 60-foot Intermountain flat car. This car itself, it's all white. Well, it's a little bit too white, so we added a little bit of grit and grime, as well as painted the ends black. For the prototype that I was looking at, that helped myself get a little bit closer, and I think this ends up being a more effective look for this particular flat car. So as we move forward, not everything comes out flawless, as we find out here with this 4750 M&S hopper. I tried a technique from a fellow modeler where you wash the car with an X21 flat base. This is a Tamiya acrylic paint. And well, as you can see, it's not the results I was hoping for, so I thought I'll just wipe it down a little bit. You dry brush it off, and you're trying to get a faded effect. It ain't happening. Well, I went for the old taco sauce.
Where's the taco sauce?
And isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
Well, the old sauce didn't solve everything. I had to rewind by using the Super Clean. It's a mild detergent to be able to take off some of the weathering and stuff that I had applied to the car. Yeah. What I do is actually just dip it into the solution, and I just massage it over the letters of the car. I've used this product a number of times, have had great results. Just don't leave it on too long because it will take the lettering off. Here's a little look at a before and after. New out of the box is 3015 and then 3002 in its new state. Now I end up using a few different products to be able to get myself to this point. I end up using paint thinner, the Tamiya washes, and some of the Doc O'Brien weathering chocks. I actually use the paint thinner to unweather a car, because sometimes unweathering the weathering works out well.
A little too ironic. And yeah, I really do think.
A technique that I tried that I had never done before was using some of the Tamiya accent washes and spraying it through my airbrush. I thought it was going to be kind of a nice effect. This is using the light gray to kind of fade that blue. And in the end, it's not necessarily the way you have to do it. It's just a way to do it. It's worth trying out. I end up having another fellow modeler try some of the techniques that I've been doing in the past. I shared them with him. He shared them with me. And we'll take a look at that in just a moment.
Do you know what time it is?
Yeah, it's like 6:15.
No, it's quiz time.
This unique locomotive was rare to see on the Sioux system as they did not have many. It started its life in the colors completely different from the classic red and white of the Sioux. A lot of visual indicators were stripped from this unit, but at the end of the day, it would still roll on the Sioux rails. Do you know what number this rare bird used to adorn? Was it A, 2118, B, 40, C, 1203, or D, 41?
We'll give you time to hop on the old interwebs to get the answer. We'll check back later.
Fellow modeler and I were talking about weathering, and he was asking about techniques that I had used, and I says, well, tell you what, let's both grab the same car, I'll weather it, send you the photo, you try to replicate what I sent, and we'll see how it turns out. Our first step was to be able to agree on a car that we both had, and that was a PS4427 by ExactRail in gray paint. Gray is nice because it's fairly forgiving with the colors we're working with. We then had to land a prototype photo, and this is the one we ended up going with because it's circa 1984, which is in between our eras. Now we look at Mike's car, brand new, out of the box, number 98, 358. It's a great car to be able to start with, and well, the first thing I started to do is share the techniques. I always look at the prototype. One of the little details that Mike pointed out was that it says 180, and that's actually Reway in St. Paul. You'll want to take note of that because we'll bring that up in a little bit. But the first thing I do is remove the trucks, and then I get that ready so I can start weathering the car itself.
Where's the taco sauce? Oh, there it is.
This car is washed with the black taco sauce as well as the dark brown and then pulled through with some of the mineral spirits. Now here's where Mike is at as far as his taco saucing, how he's applied it to the car, keeping it light, not getting overly aggressive because then we move on to chalks. I then add some of the Doc O'Brien's chalk, some of the grimy black. And the key here is to apply it unevenly, just because like the prototype, it's not a perfect application of some of the grit and grime that has been applied to the car. So you want to try to emulate that as well. Now, as you look at Mike's here, he's got the same thing going on, but he did note that he was seeing fingerprints show up in his chalking process, and this is from people that previously handled the car. I ran into the same thing, and during my Tamiya washes process, I ended up hitting it with a little bit more mineral spirits to try to knock it back, but you don't get rid of it completely. Now here's where my car is currently. I end up patching it out using just a toothpick and some black paint, and then once that stuff is all dried, I started to apply the decals. Now mine says PPG 686 or 668, something like that. It's so small most people can't read it.
Yeah.
Mike did his, but notice the details there. He did the STP 180 as we mentioned earlier. Now as we move forward here, Mike is nearing the end and he said he thinks he's calling it good. And I would agree, it looks great. Here's where my car ended up at the end of the process. We were both happy with it and it was a lot of fun to do. Some techniques that are just kind of fun to share with fellow modelers. And not all methods are the bulletproof only way to do things. There's so many different applications that you can apply to cars. Mike shared a number of photos. I'm going to share them with you. Some of the weathering he's done since we went through that little process of weathering our freight cars. Not everything is bulletproof, but as you can see here, Mike continues to try different techniques looking at the prototype.
View there through the doorway, I couldn't believe my eyes. She was standing by the stop sign, fixing to hitch a ride. Dressed to the nines, curving all those lines, you ain't got the time for me. Still taking this chance, might return a glance, stop me if you can. I reach for you, I seek the truth. Don't waste my time with another one of your line.
You can always learn a little
by looking at the real deal.
I hear it! But I don't.
Do you see it?
I don't see it. But I hear
You can hear it.
I see it. I see it.
what's in those cars? Do we know what's in there?
I do.
What?
Cars.
What are?
Cars.
What kind of cars?
Fast cars?
Oh, maybe. What do you think, Kate?
Train cars.
Train cars, all right. Those are auto racks.
Honda Civic, what the world is coming to.
Boy, if I was around in the 1970s and the world was coming to this, I'd want out of here.
I used to have one of those.
You would.
Where are the muscle cars? That ad should have read, Honda Civic, what is this world coming to? Well, we've got ourselves a 1975 fresh Cherries Honda Civic. Now these cars, a little disproportioned in my opinion. I think it's usually kind of the tires. We'll address that in a moment. But kind of a nice little car just for a generic vehicle to put on your railroad. Now let's take a look at the actual color. This is a 1975 Honda Civic, so what do? Go into Google or eBay and type in 1975 color sheet. What we're trying to find is the actual color sheets that they used at the dealerships when you ordered a car. Now they do exist, you can buy them and actually get the exact paint chip match, but I think it's actually fine to be able to click into these and start looking through the colors. Now, if you're going to repaint a car, this is a great way to be able to choose a color that you're going to repaint your car to accurately represent it. Now, we look at it and we say, is it Highland Poly Blue? Is it Matterhorn White? Nah, it's got to be Nessie Blue Poly. So that's the color that we've got on this particular car. Now, the one thing with the fresh Cherries, I do think their color line is fairly close, but I'm looking at the wheels. The wheels, as I mentioned, were a little bit oversized and kind of balloon-like. And we take this ad here and we overlay the model to be able to give us an idea of scale. Now the car scale itself, I kind of went bumper to bumper, so it actually is a little tall, which makes the car look a little pudgy, but those wheels are killing it. So one thing that you can do to be able to bring it back is find some scale wheels that are closer to the prototypes. So what I end up doing is digging through a bunch of different wheels and coming across a set that look a lot like this. Now that's a lot better. It gives the car a better stance, a better look, and then you ask yourself,
well, where do you come up with those weird wheels?
Well, you get these weird wheels accidentally. In my case, I ended up purchasing a lot of cars that when they arrived, they had these little tiny wheels on it and didn't look proportioned to the car that they were on, and maybe they were, but this looks a lot better on the Honda Civic. And to answer that question of what car did I get them off of, well, as we look at the fresh Cherries with the balloon tires, I end up pulling them off of this here red Renault. And I don't even know what a Renault is, but I know it's ugly, and the wheels actually work well on the Honda Civic. So to be able to pull the Honda Civic apart, you unscrew it, you hang on to the balloon tires for another project, but then you can pop these off simply with a screwdriver. Once you've popped them free, you can see little is better than big.
That's not what she said.
I do end up putting spacers on the axles to stop them from sliding to left or right. It's a pretty simple adjustment. We'll take a look at that in a moment. I end up using the Walthers washers, number 0090. This is a great set that slide right onto the axle. I put 2 per side so the thing doesn't slop back and forth when it's just sitting on the railroad and looking wonky. I end up reassembling the car, getting it together, and end up liking the end result. So you can see here, smaller tires are going a long ways. I end up moving on to the front end of the car and using a 1/16 inch drill bit.
Or 1.5 millimeters for the rest of the world.
We end up drilling out the front grille and knocking the headlights out because I'm going to put in a couple of lenses. This same technique can be used for class lights on a locomotive, but I'm using them obviously on the grille of this car. It's going to end up snapping it up and making it look a lot better. And now the lenses that I use are these MV Products PN26. If anybody knows where else to get lenses, let us know in the comments. But this is the lens I'm going to use. If you ever have a hard time holding on to little parts, in this case those lenses, I use a 3M Post-it note. The glue that I'm using to apply is a Tamiya quick setting glue. It's not that fast, but it's quick enough. But then use the Post-it note to be able to grab the lens and then place it onto the car, making it a lot easier to handle instead of trying to place it on there with your big old
greasy meat hands.
As we near the finish line here, you'll see that we added a license plate and there's a black decal across the front of the bumper. I did use the panel wash for what it's meant for, and that was actually to accent the panels of the hood and wells of the door. I do put a little bit on the grill, and I think it ends up snapping it up and making it look a lot nicer. One more thing I did do is cut the bottom plate off of the car. That bottom plate is meant to hold the car on the display case. I think this gives it a better profile. You can still mount it to the display case, it's just not as thick of a piece of plastic. But in the end, I think we end up having ourselves a nice looking car. Looks more era specific, a little bit more proportional, and it looks a lot nicer on the railroad. Takes away some of the distractions of like these balloon tires, as I was referring to them. Trying to find a car that looks a little bit more scale. I've tried other wheels on here. The first one is a monogram wheels. The next one here are the balloon tires that I tried to black out or add some of the accent washes. But at the end of the day, I think we end up nailing it here with just some of those more simplified, refined details that I hope that you can be able to apply some of these to some of the cars on your railroad. Because at the end of the day, if you're taking a photo and people are looking at the distracting silver blingy bubble wheels on your cars, it's just something that you can kind of do without. So hopefully this helps you.
Well, did you guess the right answer?
I don't guess the right answer, I just always get it right.
Typical know-it-all. Well, did you guess what number this adorned by saying A2118? As seen in this photo, a yard slug is in the works. Here, the former Wisconsin Central SW9 number 2118 is in the middle of being created. This unit did retain the 2118 for its entire career. As we see here, it was painted red and white. It later did receive the candy apple red in 1991. And then later the unit was sold in 1999, but kind of cool to see something from the Wisconsin Central era all the way into the late 90s.
Well, there we have it. 91 episodes in the books. We're going to let the curmudgeon close this out, but before we do, I want to say thanks to those that do subscribe, that do hit like, and that do make comments. Genuinely, I appreciate it. I try to respond back to every one of you, and that's more for the community side of things. For anybody that's sitting there going,
Oh, he only does it because he's trying to make money.
We don't make any money on this. You're drunk. Put the beer down. Sober up.
because at the end of the day, this is about having fun, enjoying the hobby, sharing the information that we have with one another, because not everybody knows all the techniques and all the things that you might already know. Other people may not. So we're just sharing that information, sharing kind of what we're up to.
Having fun with it. I mean, that's what it is about.
I enjoy the operations, so the actual scenery side where people are like,
put down the ballast.
I say
put down the ballast, just like you got to put down the beer.
At the end of the day, it's about having fun, enjoying it. Operations are what I enjoy most. I've operated this far more than I thought I would, and everybody that has come and operated has enjoyed it. So at the end of the day, it's about having fun, so let's let that crazy curmudgeon close us out.
Here's a curmudgeon coming at you about the grab of the week. The grab of the week this week is about those old internet videos. You got all kinds of them about all kinds of things, and then you end up in a rabbit hole, and, well, I tell you, about 10 hours have passed, the next thing you know, the old curmudgeon's 2 in the morning, he's watching videos about cats playing the piano. And I'm telling you right now, don't get addicted. Stay away from that stuff. It ends up looping round and round. That's the curmudgeon's gripe of the week. Next thing you know, the old curmudgeon's 2 in the morning, he's watching videos about cats playing the piano.
A big thanks to everybody that watches to the end, that has hit like, hit subscribe, as well as made comments in the past. It's those actions that help share this content, so if you haven't checked out other episodes, feel free to do so. You can also check out the tour of the GN in 1970, as well as the past episodes of the GN in 1970.
70s. Next thing you know, the old curmudgeon's 2 in the morning, he's watching videos about cats playing the piano.